Have you ever felt like you were waking up from a dream, only to realize that the world around you is nothing like you once believed? Spiritual awakening is often portrayed as a journey of enlightenment, peace, and divine connection. But what if I told you that there's a darker side to this transformation, one that no one warns you about? The truth is, awakening is not just about discovering the mysteries of the universe. It is about confronting the deepest parts of yourself. And that process? It's not always beautiful. Most people believe that stepping into higher consciousness means instant clarity, joy, and purpose. But the Bible itself reminds us, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out. Proverbs 18:15. Wisdom is not simply given. It is earned through trials, through struggles, through the breaking down of everything false, so that truth can emerge. And that is exactly what we're going to uncover today. The hidden, often painful side effects of spiritual awakening that no one talks about. Some who go through this journey find themselves lost in confusion, feeling disconnected from the world they once knew. Others struggle with overwhelming sensitivity, questioning everything, even their own identity. And then, there's the most dangerous trap of all, falling into spiritual superiority without even realizing it. These are the trials that shape an awakened soul, and if you've been experiencing any of them, you're not alone. Before we dive in, let me ask you, have you ever felt like something inside you was changing? Like you could no longer see the world the way you used to? If so, you need to stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm about to share may finally help you make sense of what's happening. And if you're here seeking wisdom, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Many who watch our videos aren't yet subscribed, and by joining us, you'll ensure that you never miss insights that could guide you through your spiritual journey. Now, let's uncover the 5 hidden side effects of awakening, starting with the first, the moment everything changes. Spiritual awakening is like emerging from a deep dive, seeing the world with new eyes, as if a veil has been lifted. It's a revelation, a glimpse into the vastness of the universe, and a deeper purpose that had always been there, waiting to be uncovered. But what no one tells you is that this newfound awareness is a double-edged sword. As Jesus said, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John 8:32. Yet freedom comes with weight. Suddenly the things that once seemed fulfilling, worldly distractions, empty ambitions, lose their luster. Awakening peels away the illusion, exposing reality for what it truly is, a battlefield between light and darkness, between what is fleeting and what is eternal. And once you see beyond the illusion, there is no turning back. Many who experience this awakening describe a paradoxical sensation, an initial euphoria from finally understanding that there is something greater, yet also an overwhelming sense of disorientation. It's like stepping into unknown territory where old maps no longer apply. In the Bible, when Paul encountered Christ on the road to Damascus, his physical sight was temporarily taken away, Acts 9:8-9, symbolizing that a new vision was being birthed, one that required time to adjust. The same happens to those who awaken spiritually. The old self, the familiar perspectives, crumble away, making room for something greater but uncertain. And this is where the deep question arises. Now what? What am I supposed to do with this understanding? The universe, vast and mysterious, suddenly seems to whisper secrets that had always been hidden. There is a call from within, an unshakable voice saying, "Seek more, go deeper." And that calling can be overwhelming, because spiritual awakening is not just about an expanded consciousness, it's about confrontation. The ego, which once dictated every decision, starts to lose its grip. The identity that had been built on societal norms, personal desires, and material attachments begins to dissolve. This is where fear often enters, as one realizes that everything they once thought was solid is, in fact, fleeting. It is the beginning of a great unlearning, a process that strips away illusions and invites the soul into uncharted territory. And yet, this is where true freedom is found. In John 3:3, Jesus tells Nicodemus, "No one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." This rebirth is not simply a matter of belief. It is a complete transformation, a redefinition of existence itself. But make no mistake, being reborn means dying first. The old self must wither before something new can take its place. This is why so many who awaken find themselves in the midst of internal struggle. They long for the comfort of what was, yet they cannot ignore the undeniable pull toward what is meant to be. And so the journey begins. But what follows is something most people never expect. As the veil lifts, confusion sets in. The desire for answers intensifies. The mind searches for understanding, grasping at scriptures, ancient texts and philosophies, anything to make sense of what is unfolding. But, as we'll see next, the greatest wisdom is not found in words, but in silence. After a spiritual awakening, confusion is inevitable. It's as if the entire foundation on which one's understanding of life was built suddenly crumbles, leaving nothing but unanswered questions. The world looks the same, yet everything feels profoundly different. The things that once seemed important lose their grip, and priorities shift in ways that are difficult to explain. This is where many begin an obsessive search for answers, turning to ancient scriptures, philosophical teachings, and mystical traditions, hoping to find something that makes sense of this new reality. Even the Bible tells us that wisdom is not simply given, but diligently sought. "Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." Jeremiah 33:3. And so the seeker embarks on a journey of knowledge, trying to decode the mysteries of the universe and the depths of the soul. But here's the paradox. While knowledge can be a guide, it is never the destination. Many who awaken find themselves overwhelmed by an avalanche of conflicting teachings, struggling to reconcile different perspectives. At times, the more they seek, the more lost they feel. The mind, once so certain of how the world worked, now wrestles with the unsettling realization that reality is far more complex than it ever seemed. It is the kind of confusion that even great biblical figures experienced. Take Moses, for example. When called by God to lead his people, his immediate response was doubt and uncertainty. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" Exodus 3:11. Awakening does not come with a roadmap, and often the first step feels like walking blindly into the unknown. This is when many begin to feel the weight of isolation. Friends and family might not understand the transformation that is taking place, and explaining it often feels impossible. What once seemed like casual conversations now feels shallow. Daily routines start to feel empty. The awakened soul longs for something deeper, something real. But in this longing, a mistake is often made, searching for answers externally rather than looking within. Jesus himself taught that the kingdom of God is not something to be found in the outside world, but rather, the kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17-21. The more one chases after explanations, the further they stray from the true source of wisdom. Silence, reflection, and direct communion with the divine. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, often strips away external certainties so that one may find truth within. This is the beginning of deep spiritual refinement. The mind, desperate for clarity, must learn to sit with the unknown. It is a difficult lesson, but a necessary one. When Jesus was led into the wilderness for 40 days, he was not given immediate answers. Instead, he was given solitude, temptation, and silence. Matthew 4:1-11. And yet it was in that very solitude that he emerged with unshakable clarity. The same is true for those who have awakened. Before truth reveals itself, there must be a period of wandering through uncertainty. But this is not where the journey ends. If confusion is the first challenge of awakening, what follows can be even more difficult. The soul, once tethered to the familiar, begins to feel detached from the world it once knew. Relationships change, connections fade, and soon the feeling of disconnection sets in. This is where the true test begins, one that many are unprepared for. One of the most unsettling side effects of spiritual awakening is the growing sense of disconnection. At first, it feels like a subtle shift. Small moments where conversations with friends no longer resonate, where old habits start to feel meaningless. But soon, it deepens. The people who were once closest begin to seem distant, not because they have changed, but because the awakened soul has stepped into a new reality that others may not yet perceive. The Bible warns that those who walk a path of truth will not always be understood. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. John 15:18. Awakening comes at a cost, and one of the first prices to be paid is the feeling of separation from the world one once knew. This is where loneliness creeps in. The awakened mind no longer finds satisfaction in shallow interactions or meaningless distractions. There is an unshakable craving for deeper conversations, for meaningful connections, for souls that truly see. But the harsh reality is that not everyone is on the same journey. Some will dismiss spiritual growth as foolishness, others will resist change altogether. And so, relationships that once felt unbreakable begin to fade. It is painful, and it can even feel like a punishment, but in reality it is a divine realignment. The universe is clearing space for something greater, for relationships built on true spiritual connection rather than surface-level familiarity. Even Jesus experienced this. In Matthew 13:57 he said, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home." Those closest to him could not accept the depth of his wisdom because they only saw him as he once was. The same happens with those who awaken. Friends and family may not understand, not because they do not care, but because they still see the old version of the person they once knew. This is why many who experience spiritual growth feel out of place, like wanderers in a world that no longer fits. But here is the truth. Disconnection is not a curse. It is a calling. It is an invitation to seek out those who share the same path, those whose spirits are aligned with a higher truth. This period of isolation is not meant to break the awakened soul, but to strengthen it. Just as Jesus withdrew to pray in solitude, Luke 5:16, those who awaken are often called to moments of separation, not to be abandoned, but to be refined. The spiritual path is not about clinging to old attachments. It is about surrendering to the divine plan. And part of that plan is letting go of relationships that no longer serve one's higher purpose, trusting that the right people will come when the time is right. The universe never leaves a void unfilled. For every connection lost, a new and deeper bond is waiting to be formed. But this transition is not easy. The heart aches for companionship, for the comfort of familiarity. And yet, just as night must fall before the dawn, this season of solitude is necessary before the next chapter can unfold. And what comes next is perhaps the most unexpected consequence of all: heightened sensitivity. The world, once perceived through a veil of indifference, suddenly becomes overwhelming. The awakened soul begins to feel not just their own emotions, but the weight of the universe itself. As spiritual awakening deepens, so does sensitivity. It's as if the soul, once dulled by distractions and numb to the unseen forces at play, suddenly becomes raw and exposed to everything. The pain of the world is no longer distant. It is felt deeply, as if it were one's own. The struggles of others no longer seem separate. They weigh on the awakened heart in a way that cannot be ignored. This heightened awareness is a gift, but it is also a burden. Jesus himself wept for the suffering of others, John 11:35, showing that divine consciousness does not make one immune to pain. Instead, it magnifies empathy. The awakened soul no longer sees suffering as something abstract, but as a reality that demands a response. This newfound sensitivity extends beyond emotions. It touches every part of existence. Crowded places can feel overwhelming, loud noises become unbearable, and even casual conversations carry an energetic weight that was once imperceptible. The spiritual connection to the universe intensifies, making it impossible to ignore the hidden frequencies that govern life. The heart becomes attuned to more than just words. It feels energy, it senses deception, it discerns truth beyond appearances. The Bible speaks of this heightened awareness, but solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. Hebrews 5:14. This is not paranoia, it is the sharpening of spiritual perception. But with this sensitivity comes exhaustion. The mind, bombarded with new information, struggles to process the intensity of emotions, thoughts, and spiritual downloads. Many who awaken find themselves needing more solitude, more time in prayer, more moments of stillness just to rebalance. Even Jesus would withdraw to pray alone, Luke 6:12, understanding that spiritual energy must be replenished. This is why those who experience awakening often feel drained, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. The weight of the world is heavy, and without proper spiritual grounding, it can become unbearable. Yet in this heightened awareness lies a powerful lesson. Sensitivity is not a weakness, it is a calling. It is an invitation to step into divine purpose, to become a vessel of love and healing in a world desperately in need. This is where many begin to feel the pull toward their mission, whether it is through service, teaching, or simply embodying the light in daily life. The universe does not awaken a soul without reason. There is a purpose behind the sensitivity, a reason why the awakened heart feels so deeply. And that reason is simple: to love as Christ loved, to see as God sees, to act with wisdom and compassion. But before that purpose can fully unfold, there is one more challenge to face: the loss of identity. Because as the old self crumbles, the question arises, who am I now? The ego resists change, clinging to familiar labels, but the awakened soul knows that something deeper is calling. And this, more than anything else, is what leads to the next and perhaps the most unsettling phase of all, the existential crisis. One of the most unsettling aspects of spiritual awakening is the inevitable loss of identity. The person who once existed, the one shaped by societal expectations, personal ambitions, and worldly attachments, no longer fits within this new reality. It's as if the old self has died, yet the new self has not fully emerged. This in-between state can feel like wandering through a void, unsure of what is real and what is merely a remnant of the past. Even the strongest faith can be shaken in this moment, leading to a crisis where the fundamental questions of existence come crashing down. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? This is not a new struggle. Even biblical figures went through this dark night of the soul. When Moses left behind his life as an Egyptian prince, he spent 40 years in the wilderness before discovering his divine calling, Exodus 2:15-3:10. Paul, after his conversion, did not immediately step into his mission. He first withdrew for years of spiritual refinement, Galatians 1:15-18. This pattern repeats throughout history because transformation is never instant. The universe, in its divine wisdom, strips away the false self before revealing the truth. But in the process, the mind resists. The ego clings to old narratives, old identities, refusing to let go of what was comfortable. And so, many find themselves trapped in an identity crisis, feeling lost, unworthy, or even abandoned by God. This crisis is not a sign of failure. It is proof that the soul is expanding. The discomfort is not punishment, but refinement. The old self was built on illusions, and illusions must shatter before truth can emerge. This is why Jesus said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily." Luke 9:23. Denying oneself does not simply mean resisting temptation. It means surrendering the ego, letting go of everything that is not in alignment with divine purpose. And yet this surrender is terrifying because it requires trust in something unseen. It demands faith that even in the darkest moments, something greater is at work. But here's the hidden blessing. Once the false identity fades, what remains is something pure, something eternal. This is where true purpose begins to take shape. The soul no longer seeks validation from the world, but from the divine. The attachments to titles, roles, and external success lose their hold. What matters now is authenticity, living in alignment with the calling placed upon one's spirit. The universe does not create without intention, and no soul awakens by accident. Every trial, every crisis, is shaping the awakened one into who they were always meant to be. Yet even here another danger lurks. Some, in their newfound spiritual clarity, fall into the subtle trap of superiority, believing they have reached a level of understanding beyond others, looking down on those who have not yet awakened. This, above all, is one of the greatest pitfalls of the spiritual journey, because the moment one believes they are above others, they have already fallen. And that is exactly where the next great challenge begins. One of the most insidious traps of spiritual awakening is the illusion of superiority. After breaking free from old beliefs and expanding their understanding of the universe, many fall into the subtle temptation of seeing themselves as more enlightened than others. It starts innocently, recognizing the blindness in the world, feeling frustrated by those who remain caught in materialism or ignorance. But soon, judgment creeps in. The awakened soul begins to see others as less evolved, forgetting that every person is walking their own divine path. This is where pride takes root, and what was once a journey of humility and truth transforms into a quiet arrogance, one that distances rather than unites. The Bible warns of this very danger, for whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Matthew 23:12. This spiritual pride is a deception, because true wisdom does not seek to elevate the self, but to serve. Jesus, the most enlightened being to walk the earth, did not boast of his knowledge. He humbled himself, washing the feet of his disciples. John 13:12-17. He did not look down on those who were lost. Instead, he walked among them, teaching with patience and love. The moment someone begins to see themselves as above others spiritually, they have already distanced themselves from the very essence of awakening, compassion. The universe does not awaken souls to make them feel superior. It awakens them to guide, to love, and to bring light to those who are still finding their way. But superiority can be blinding. It creates division rather than connection. Some begin to isolate themselves, believing that others cannot understand them. Others attempt to force their newfound wisdom onto those who are not yet ready to receive it. And yet, awakening was never meant to be an imposition. It is an invitation. Jesus did not force his truth upon people. He spoke in parables, allowing those with open hearts to understand. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Matthew 13:9. He knew that not everyone would be ready, and that was okay. Those who are meant to receive the truth will find it in their own time. This is where patience becomes essential. Not everyone is at the same stage of their journey, and that is by divine design. Just as a tree does not rush its growth, the soul unfolds at its own pace. The role of the awakened is not to judge but to inspire, not to force but to be an example. The universe moves in divine timing, and what one understands today, another will come to see when the time is right. Superiority is a distraction from the real mission, which is to walk in humility, wisdom, and love. And so the question remains, how should one guide others without falling into the trap of pride? The answer lies in one of the greatest spiritual truths of all, love. Love is the key, the foundation of all things. And that is exactly where this journey must lead next. Because in the end, the greatest wisdom is not in knowledge, but in the simple, profound act of love itself. If there is one truth that stands above all others, it is this: love is the highest form of wisdom. Many who awaken spiritually feel an urgency to share what they have learned, to guide others, to wake them up. But in doing so, they often forget the most important lesson of all. Awakening is not about forcing truth upon others, it is about embodying it. Jesus did not demand that people follow him. He loved them into transformation. He walked with them, healed them, taught them patiently, knowing that true change comes not through coercion but through example. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. John 13:35. Love is not about proving who is right or who is further along in their journey. It is about meeting people where they are, offering them grace rather than judgment. Some will resist change, others will mock it, and many will not understand. But that is not for the awakened soul to control. The universe moves at its own pace. Every person has their own divine timing, their own path to walk. Patience is not just a virtue, it is a necessity. When Jesus spoke of the farmer sowing seeds, Matthew 13:3-9, he was teaching a spiritual law. Some seeds fall on rocky ground, some among thorns, and some on fertile soil. The awakened do not get to decide which soil another person is. They are only called to plant the seeds and trust in divine timing. This is why the greatest teachers are not the loudest voices, but the ones who simply live their truth. The light they carry is undeniable, not because they impose it, but because it radiates naturally from within them. True transformation happens when people witness love in action. When they see someone who is kind despite being wronged, who is patient despite being misunderstood, who is compassionate even toward those who reject them, they begin to question their own path. This is the power of love. It does not push, it pulls. But love also requires surrender. The awakened soul must release the need to control how others evolve. Just as no one could have rushed their own awakening, they cannot rush another's. The universe unfolds in divine order, and what one does not understand today may become clear tomorrow. Trust in that process is essential. Love is not just about giving guidance. It is about being a safe place for others when they are ready to seek it. Not by standing above them, but by walking beside them. And so the journey of awakening is not just about knowledge or perception. It is about embodying the highest truth. And that truth is love. Everything else fades. The struggles, the questions, the moments of doubt, all of it becomes insignificant in the presence of love. The awakened soul understands that in the end, there is no greater wisdom, no higher calling, no deeper purpose than this: to love as God loves. Now that you know the hidden side effects of spiritual awakening, the question is, how will you navigate this journey? Awakening is not just about seeing the truth, it's about learning how to live with that truth. It's about embracing the discomfort, trusting the process, and surrendering to the divine wisdom that is guiding you every step of the way. Have you ever experienced any of these challenges? Maybe you've felt disconnected from those around you, struggled with overwhelming sensitivity, or even questioned your own identity. Share your experience in the comments. I want to hear your story. Remember, you are not alone in this. And if this video resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next revelation. We're building a community of awakened souls, and you are a part of it. Before you go, I have another video waiting for you, one that will take you even deeper into your spiritual transformation. Click on it now and I'll see you there. This is Celestial Truths signing off. Stay strong, stay awakened, and keep walking your path.